When trust is compromised, the biggest problem waits ahead. The same is the case with financial systems across the world. With the wave of banking falls in recent weeks, the trust in the banking systems of the world is declining, thereby causing a failure of the big fish in the ecosystem. Thank you for joining me today. My name is Sabita Mishra and this is TFI Post. Credit Suisse, Switzerland's second largest bank, trailing the UBS Group, is on the verge of collapse. After the dramatic fall of the California-based Silicon Valley Bank, distrust arose in the banking system, which was evident by the sell-offs in the shares of the bank around the world, including Credit Suisse. The stock fell as much as 31%, hitting records low. The biggest blow to the Credit Suisse came from the Saudi National Bank. During an interview with the Bloomberg TV, chairman of the SNB, Amar Al-Khudairi, denied any further financial assistance to the bank. When asked about it, he categorically said, "Absolutely not." According to him, I quote, "The answer is absolutely not, for many reasons outside the simplest reason, which is the regulatory and statutory." It is worth noting that the SNB is the single largest shareholder in Credit Suisse Bank, owning 9.9% of the company. The requirement of capital often prevents banks from acquiring and holding more than 10% of other banks. While he said the other reasons, he was actually signaling towards the record of Credit Suisse. He further said that the SNB's investment in Credit Suisse was opportunist and the Saudi National Bank would exit when the proper value had been acquired for the shares. The timing was highly unfavorable, with investors already on edge due to other potential weak spots in the financial system. The remarks exacerbate worries about the bank's profit-making capabilities and increase the likelihood of other rounds of fundraising from shareholders. This led to a surge in credit default swaps as investors sought to shield themselves from the possibility of a Credit Suisse default. In tandem, the bank's stocks took a massive hit, dropping by 24% in a single day, the largest drop ever recorded. Furthermore, prices on its bond fell to levels indicating financial distress. In between all this ruckus, Indian Twitter users are calling it karma, which pays back. People are linking the bank's worst crisis with the Adani Hindenburg row. Actually, when Hindenburg released its controversial and propaganda report, the Adani Group came under absolute pressure from the stock market, where the group's share plunged steeply to an all-time low. The group faced staunch criticism from across the world. But upon closer inspection, it was clear that the entire report was a piece of garbage designed to create a frenzy in order to profit from short selling. But some Western civil societies and financial institutions sought to fulfill their sinister interests, and Credit Suisse was one of them. Actually, after the release of the report, Credit Suisse was the first bank to stop accepting bonds as collateral for margin loans of some of the group entities of Adani Group. Let us understand it simply. Margin loans are the loans that allow you to borrow money to invest by using your existing shares, managed funds, or cash as collateral. But after the Adani Group was targeted, Credit Suisse refused to accept those bonds as collateral, which mounted extra financial pressure on the group, thereby further deteriorating the value of its shares. But as of now, the Adani Group is again gaining momentum in the stock market. And Credit Suisse, which became part of the hit job in Adani's case, is now in the worst financial crisis that it could have barely imagined a month ago. Now one can say that being a banking institution, the decision of Credit Suisse was prima facie justified. However, the reality is far different from that. But before that, we should ask the question, even before the SNB chairman's interview, why was the bank in crisis in the first place? Actually, after the fall of Silicon Valley Bank, the lack of trust took over the stock market. As a result, the share values of Credit Suisse also started to plummet. This was just because of the bank's past records. Back in 2008, the world was hit by the century's first and worst economic crisis. In the wake of the crisis, Credit Suisse came under criticism because of poor risk management practices. The bank was found to have invested heavily in high-risk assets, which ultimately led to significant losses for the institution and its clients. Apparently, current situation in the market are not completely different. But it was just a single example. Credit Suisse has lost the trust of the public in almost every half-decade since then. Credit Suisse was fined $2.6 billion by the US government in 2014 for assisting its clients in tax evasion. And it was not just an allegation. Instead, the bank admitted to helping wealthy Americans hide assets and avoid taxes for decades. Again in 2019, bank came to the limelight for not so good reasons. Credit Suisse was embroiled in a spying scandal in which the bank was accused of spying on its own employees. The bank's former chief operating officer and head of human resources were both fired following the revelation. Finally, the most recent controversy involving the bank occurred only 2 years ago. In 2021, Credit Suisse was one of the several banks that suffered significant losses due to the collapse of Archegos Capital Management, a hedge fund. Credit Suisse was criticized for its risk management practices and for failing to act quickly enough to address the situation. After so many wicked financial deeds, the credibility of the bank was almost at zero. And this proved to be the root cause of growing distrust for the bank among shareholders as well as the Saudi National Bank. Credit Suisse is now in deep waters and it is hard to come out of it on its own, while Adani Group has started to emerge again. In a recent update, Switzerland's biggest bank is now eyeing taking over the Credit Suisse bank after the authorities urged it to get a deal over the line in a bid to avoid panic in the market. This is the best example of foreign banks' prejudice regarding Indian companies and shows how the growing Indian business institutions sting in their eyes. So it can be said indeed that after a few weeks of its take on Adani Group, now it is that karma that is paying off.